So now we're going to hear from Tobin. He's involved with the trade union. He's just going to tell us a wee bit about what he does.
So I'm a relatively newly qualified physio. I qualified about 2.5 years ago. I'm working in South East Wales in an Bevan University Health Board, and I'm one of the stewards there. As a workplace steward, hopefully I'll be able to teach you a little bit more about what we do and how you might be able to get involved once you become qualified. So stewards aren't just physiotherapists; they can be associate members of the CSP as well. So there are valuable support workers, either physiotherapy technicians or physiotherapy assistants. So they can also be a steward if they are an associate member. And like Ian mentioned earlier, stewards are elected by other CSP members, and they serve a really important role to support members in the workplace, either just through giving support and advice, or when things maybe go wrong, to attend meetings with them with management, and to negotiate terms when it comes to things like capability reviews or expenses payments, overpayments, things like that. We'll go into that a little bit more shortly. So one of the things that in terms of getting more involved with the CSP and being a steward, a really important part of your role is to keep in touch with members in terms of what's happening in the CSP. So by default, then you need to kind of be aware of what's going on, and then you get more involved as a result. That's a really good way of getting involved. And by representing your members in the workplace, you might have to accompany to meetings. You meet regularly with management. To where I work in South East Wales, we meet bi-monthly with our physiotherapy partnership working group. So as with everything in physio, we've got an acronym for it, so PPWG. Basically what we do there, the stewards meet with the senior physiotherapy management, and we get an opportunity there to have our input on behalf of CSP members with regards to like new policies and procedures. So for us personally, we've had a new hospital open in the last sort of 4 months or so. So we've been really sort of pivotal in helping to scope the new on-call policy, which affects a lot of us, especially rotational staff, but also like working conditions and things like that. Negotiation with management as well is a really, really good skill. So it builds on what you already have as a physio student, and then becoming a physiotherapist, it builds on your existing communication skills. You wouldn't have got this far if you couldn't communicate well with people. So that builds on what you already do day to day with your patients, but just brings it to a different level, brings it to a different forum. And that's really, really useful experience when it comes to looking at like more senior posts. You've already got a really good idea of how policies and procedures work in the workplace, which is really useful to support your members, but also in terms of your development as well. And the CSP provides you with a lot of training on that. So you're not just kind of turned out into the wild and get on with it. At the moment, it's all distance learning, but I completed mine back in September this year, where there was 3 sort of distance learning opportunities. Any work that you do as a steward, as long as your workplace has a trade union partnership in place, it will be paid because you're doing work underneath your employer, basically. So what you do as a steward, because it benefits your employer, you're entitled to payment for that work. So it's done in work time. So really briefly, the first distance learning is all about your role and your rights in the workplace as a steward, and communicating with your members. Second one is all about how to work with your managers, looking at the different types of policies and procedures, working with staff side, which is where all of the trade union reps in your organisation come together and meet with like directorate and sort of higher up in the organisation. Also how to basis your negotiations as well. And the third one, how to deal with like members' concerns, disciplinary cases, and looking at sort of competency and capability as well.
For you, how did you initially get involved within your role?
So I've been really involved with the CSP since being a student, actually. So I started off by being elected as a CSP student rep when back when I was still in uni, it was still CSP representation. And then through that became a member of the Welsh board, similar to Chloe. Eventually ended up being chair of what was then the student executive committee, now the student reference group, and then came on to be the new graduate rep for CSP Welsh board. So through all that, you kind of get to go to all these different events, and you meet lots of stewards, especially at events like the annual reps conference, and that kind of opened my eyes to what a steward does, and wanted to get involved still as a qualified member of staff, and help support members in the workplace, same as I sort of helped support students when I was still at uni. So
someone has asked if there are stewards already in place at a place of work, do you have to wait for one to step aside before putting yourself forward for election?
Not necessarily, no. The kind of aim of the CSP is to have at least one steward in every workplace to support CSP members, but it depends on the organisation and how it's set up. So if you've got a bit like where I work, we've got more than sort of 7 different sites. I can't think off the top of my head how many we've got, but we're really spread out geographically, so it's really useful to have lots of different stewards. But if, say, you're based in one really big acute hospital, it's still quite useful to have a number of stewards because you've got a number of different departments. So what I would say is just speak to your management and speak to the team that you're working in, speak to the stewards that are already in place, because it might be that you can do a job share as a steward as well. So it might be that if they're sort of at capacity, someone else might want to sort of release some of their responsibilities to you. But no, long and short of it, if there are stewards already in place, talk to them, and there might be things that you can do, even if they have got capacity as stewards. We've got other roles within the workplace where you can get involved with the CSP as well. So yeah, have a chat with them. They're all a friendly bunch.
Is there anything in particular, while we've got all our attendees here, any kind of send-home messages that you really want to get across? Maybe start with Luke.
Yeah, I think to try and sort of sum up being a steward in a bit of a soundbite, it's almost like an extension of why a lot of us became physios in the first place, because we want to help people. And being a steward just means that you can help your fellow CSP members in the workplace. And it's a really wide reaching thing. They can come to you with all sorts of different things. So it makes it really, really interesting for you. And you're doing a really good job to help support your colleagues at the same time.